The air in the Vance penthouse, usually crisp with a scent of expensive polish and old money, had grown thick and poisonous. For a decade, Alara Vance had navigated this rarefied atmosphere, often feeling like a well-dressed explorer in a foreign land. She had married Liam Vance, a man whose kindness was as genuine as his lack of spine, and in doing so, had inherited his mother, Evelyn Vance. Evelyn was a masterpiece of cultured antagonism, a woman whose every polite inquiry was a subtle evaluation, whose every compliment contained a hidden dagger. She saw Alara, a woman who had built her own modest consulting firm before meeting Liam, as an interloper, a necessary evil whose practicality might, perhaps, stabilize her feckless son. The true conflict, however, began not with marriage, but with death. 8 months prior, Alara's eccentric Aunt Clara, the only true family Alara had ever known, passed away. Clara, a reclusive investor with a penchant for early-stage tech and high-level paranoia, left Alara her entire estate. The sum, after all liquidations, was staggering, a shade over $80 million. Alara knew, instantly, that she could not announce the full scope of this windfall. She told Liam the inheritance was significant and assured him that their lifestyle was secure, but she kept the specific dollar amount sequestered even from him. This wasn't because she didn't trust Liam, it was because she understood the gravitational pull of Evelyn Vance. Aunt Clara had warned her, years ago, on a rainy afternoon spent reviewing estate planning. Alara, Clara had rasped, her voice dry as parchment paper. Money doesn't change who you are, it reveals who everyone else is. Had been floundering for months, propped up by increasingly desperate bridge loans. She had always relied on the appearance of wealth, never the substance. Darling Alara, Evelyn purred one humid July afternoon over iced tea, her enormous sapphire ring catching the light. I'm merely requesting a temporary line of credit, say, $5 million. It's an investment, you understand. A minor liquidity issue. You won't even notice it's gone. Alara smiled a tight, practiced smile. Evelyn, I've already committed a large portion of Clara's estate to long-term conservative investments. I'm afraid my liquid assets are rather tied up. This was true, in a way Evelyn couldn't possibly guess. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, the sapphire seeming to turn to ice. But your family, Alara. When Liam and I spoke, he mentioned the total was substantial. Surely, securing the future reputation of the Vance name takes precedence over, what? Municipal bonds. The future is best secured by prudence, Evelyn, Alara replied, her voice soft but absolute. I wish you luck with legacy acquisitions. The refusal was a declaration of war. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn's appeals escalated into accusations. She began implying that Alara was hoarding Vance money, though the fortune was entirely Alara's, earned by an aunt who had viewed the Vance lineage with utter disdain. Liam, trapped in the middle, began sleeping poorly. She's my mother, Alara, he pleaded one night, rubbing his tired temples. Can't we just give her a smaller loan? Stop the screaming. Liam, Alara said, turning away from him, the distance between them suddenly vast. Your mother does not need a loan. She needs a bailout. And bailouts only encourage the disaster that follows. Part 2. The Betrayal. The inevitable crash came 3 months later. Legacy acquisitions imploded spectacularly. Creditors descended, banks issued foreclosure notices, and the elegant facade Evelyn had maintained fractured, revealing personal debt accrued through unchecked spending and disastrous investments in undervalued properties. The liability approached $12 million. The day the news hit the financial papers, Evelyn didn't call. She sent a legal representative. Alara was in a meeting when her own lawyer, the meticulous and perpetually worried Mr. Stern, pulled her out. His face was a mask of professional alarm. Mrs. Vance, we have a problem, Stern began, adjusting his tailored jacket. Evelyn, Mrs. Vance Sr., has filed a lawsuit. It's highly aggressive. Alara remained calm. On what grounds? She is not entitled to my inheritance. She's claiming fraud and concealment of marital assets, Stern explained, lowering his voice. She is alleging that the bulk of your inheritance was finalized prior to your third wedding anniversary, making it partially community property under a highly creative interpretation of your prenuptial agreement. She is attempting to force a liquidation of the estate to cover her debts, arguing that your refusal constitutes a willful detriment to the family's collective financial standing. Alara felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't merely a desperate plea for money. It was a character assassination designed to ruin her financially and emotionally. She knew I wouldn't budge, so she chose to destroy me, Alara whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. But the worst betrayal was yet to come. Later that evening, she confronted Liam. He was sitting in the dark study, clutching a tumbler of scotch, looking utterly defeated. "Did you know?" Alara asked, her voice dangerously level. Liam flinched. "Know what, Alara?" Catastrophic. "That your mother was preparing this legal attack? Did you give her any information, any scrap of detail about the inheritance that she could twist into a claim?" Liam hesitated, and in that pause, Alara saw the truth. "She asked me about the timeline," he admitted, his voice thick with shame. "She said she was trying to calculate capital gains for some stupid tax form. I told her Aunt Clara's will was probated officially in March, but Clara died in February. I didn't think she would weaponize it." Alara felt a profound hollowness settle in her chest. She had guarded her fortune religiously, anticipating the external threat, only to be wounded by the internal weakness of the man she loved. Evelyn hadn't just tried to steal Alara's money. She had successfully driven a wedge of deceit and distrust into the foundation of her marriage. "She is not just suing me, Liam. She is suing us. And you helped her load the gun." Alara left the study, the polished silence of the penthouse amplifying the sound of her own heartbeat. She knew then that she was truly on her own. She called Mr. Stern immediately. "It's time, Mr. Stern. Implement the plan. All of it." Part 3. The Scorpions in the Bottle. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in late October. The courtroom was intimate, filled mostly with lawyers and a few reporters sniffing around the edge of the Vance financial scandal. Evelyn, draped in charcoal silk, sat at the plaintiff's table with a veneer of suffering dignity, occasionally dabbing her dry eyes. She looked every inch the grieving matriarch desperate to salvage her family's good name from the claws of a greedy daughter-in-law. Alara, dressed in a sharp navy suit, felt an icy calm. She refused to meet Evelyn's gaze, focusing only on the legal pad before her. Evelyn's lawyer, a notoriously aggressive shark named Benedict, opened with a theatrical flourish, detailing Alara's egregious refusal to honor marital and familial obligations, and painting the $80 million inheritance as a secret cache Alara had deliberately isolated from the marital balance sheet. "We are seeking immediate discovery and freezing of all funds," Benedict concluded, "as we have substantial evidence that Mrs. Alara Vance deliberately obfuscated the assets' timeline to ensure they remained separate property, thereby harming Mrs. Vance Sr. and the entire Vance family legacy." A ripple of low-level murmuring went through the gallery. When it was Alara's turn, Mr. Stern rose, adjusting his glasses. He did not engage in theatrics. He simply held up a thick, bound document. "Your Honor," Mr. Stern began, his voice dry and precise, "the plaintiff's entire argument rests on the premise that my client, Mrs. Alara Vance, currently holds and controls the majority of the fortune inherited from her late Aunt Clara, and that she is willfully withholding it." He paused, letting the statement hang in the air. Evelyn leaned forward, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips, certain that Stern was about to concede to a settlement. "This premise," Stern continued, "is factually inaccurate." He walked briskly toward the clerk and submitted the document. "We are submitting the deed of trust for the majority of the estate. The bulk of the inheritance, specifically $75 million, is not, and has not been, under the direct, unilateral control of Mrs. Alara Vance since early March of this year." The courtroom went silent. Evelyn's triumphant smile dissolved. "Your Honor," Stern explained, "per the explicit and ironclad last instructions of Aunt Clara and finalized by my client using a structure that predates any discussion of Vance family debt, $75 million was immediately placed into an irrevocable, generation-skipping Clara trust. He waited for the implications to sink in. The terms of the Clara trust are explicit. The principal capital is completely protected. It cannot be loaned, borrowed against, or liquidated by the sole beneficiary, Mrs. Alara Vance, save for dire, predefined medical emergencies, or for the express purpose of funding the education of future, direct descendants. Critically, the trust document was signed and finalized 2 weeks before Mrs. Vance officially informed her husband of the estate's full magnitude. Evelyn gasped a sharp, choked sound. Stern looked directly at the opposing counsel, his voice ringing with quiet authority. Mr. Benedict is suing a phantom. He is attempting to liquidate a trust that is legally untouchable. The capital is completely insulated from any claims related to community property, marital debt, or personal liability. The judge, a formidable woman accustomed to financial shenanigans, examined the documents, her face hardening. Mr. Benedict, the judge stated, her tone glacial. Are you aware of the structure of this trust? Benedict stammered, his confidence draining rapidly. Your Honor, we were led to believe. Belief is not evidence, counsel. The judge cut in. An irrevocable trust is precisely that. The principle is protected by law. Mrs. Vance has precisely $5 million in liquid, separate property assets remaining, against which your client may attempt to seek discovery. Do you truly wish to bankrupt yourself attempting to seize $5 million when your client is liable for 12? Evelyn's head swam. The $75 million, the massive prize she had calculated her entire strategy around, was a mirage. It was locked away, secured by Alara's quiet foresight, a move that had been planned not in malice, but in sheer, necessary defense. Aunt Clara had saved her. She had built a fortress around Alara's future against precisely this kind of predator. Evelyn rose, trembling, her poise utterly shattered. This is a deception. A conspiracy, she shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger at Alara. You hid this. You lied. Alara finally looked at Evelyn, meeting her furious gaze with a cold, clear focus. No, Evelyn, Alara said, her voice piercing the stunned silence. I didn't lie. I protected myself. And unlike you, I honored Aunt Clara's dying wishes. The judge banged her gavel, restoring order, but the damage was done. Evelyn Vance's desperate gambit had failed completely, exposed as a ruthless, grasping attempt to steal money that was never, legally or morally, hers. Part 4. The true cost of protection. The lawsuit evaporated swiftly. Benedict withdrew the most aggressive claims, realizing the futility. Evelyn Vance Sr. was left to face her creditors with no recourse, forced to sell the family's ancestral home and face public humiliation. The Vance name, which she had protected so fiercely, was now tainted by her own avarice. Alara had won, but the victory felt heavy, coated in the metallic taste of disillusionment. She had secured her fortune, but the cost had been the dissolution of her peace and the near destruction of her marriage. Liam waited for her at home that night. He hadn't attended the hearing. He claimed he couldn't face the spectacle, but Alara knew it was because he couldn't face the truth of his mother's character or his own complicity. Alara, he began, looking smaller and lost without his usual veneer of smooth charm. I am so sorry. I should have stood up to her. I should have defended you. Yes, Liam, you should have, Alara agreed, stripping off her suit jacket and tossing it onto an armchair. She felt exhausted, stripped bare by the fight. You waited to see who would win before choosing sides. That's unfair, he protested weakly. Is it? Alara challenged, stepping closer. Our entire marriage, your mother has been draining us, emotionally and financially. And when I finally gained a means of ensuring our future, your first instinct wasn't to celebrate, but to placate her. Your loyalty is divided, Liam, and that division almost cost me everything. She sat down, massaging her temples. The trust didn't just protect my money. It revealed where your true priorities lie. You value the cessation of conflict far more than you value me. Liam sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. I love you, Alara. I know you do, she said softly, the harshness leaving her voice, replaced by a deep sorrow. But love is not enough without courage. I built a financial fortress against external threats. But I need to know, Liam, do I also need to build a personal fortress against the lack of faith within this marriage? She gave him an ultimatum, quiet, definitive, and non-negotiable. He could not merely apologize. He had to prove, unequivocally, that he valued the life they had together more than the fragile, demanding ghost of the Vance legacy. He had to be her partner, not an observer waiting for the dust to settle. The next few months were agonizingly slow, a test of Liam's character. He finally found his strength, not in fighting his mother, who had become a pariah, but in fighting for Alara. He sought therapy, cut off financial and emotional ties to Evelyn, and dedicated himself to rebuilding the trust he had shattered. Alara watched him, cautiously, allowing the fragile foundation of their relationship to be relaid on a bedrock of honesty, not convenience. She had lost the illusion of a perfect partnership, but she had gained an undeniable truth. She was secure. She was confident. And thanks to an eccentric aunt who knew the true nature of greed, her fortune and her future was irrevocably, beautifully hers. The hidden trust wasn't just a legal document. It was a testament to self-preservation, a shield that had repelled the vulture and allowed Alara, finally, to begin living a life truly on her own terms. She learned that while money brought conflict, having control over it brought the one thing more valuable than any inheritance: peace. Thanks for watching.